Hey, what's up, AJT Jungle? Welcome back to this is chapter 2, the second part in the power of habits, the mechanics of change. So just to review last week, um, some of the key components. We talked about how habits are a simple cue routine reward loop that saves effort, mental effort, and it's a 3 part in what we call the habit loop. And we talked about the mice experiment, how they were put in a maze and there was chocolate at the end, and once they learned how to get to that chocolate, they formed a habit, and it didn't even matter if they put chocolate at the end. They would just automatically go. They would just automatically go. So it went from them trying to sniff it out to we're not even worrying about that because that requires effort. We just use the habit that we created by following this specific path, and then we're going to get to the end. So what they call that process is chunking. And you may hear that word down the road, so I wanted to make sure you got the definition of it. But it's the basis of all habit formation. Okay, you turn a sequence of actions into an automatic routine. That's what you're doing when you're creating a habit. And that's what we call chunking. And its evolutionary role is clear, but more importantly, it is very crucial. It allows the brain to save that ever important mental energy. The energy that we can't really get back in our brain unless we go to sleep. That's what recharges our mental energy. Taking a nap or going to sleep. And if we use our brain up doing simple menial tasks, then when the hard things come along, we'll be out of energy. I know some of you have expended your mental energy so much. When you're done, all you want to do is close your eyes and go to sleep. And that's your brain telling you, look, I can't really function anymore until you go to sleep. Now, we didn't talk about this last week, but the military training, they do different things to create different types of habits. Okay, they use different techniques and things. And if you get into special forces, you go into SEAL training, they're gonna completely reprogram your mind, and you'll be able to shut down. And there are things that you'll do just by habit, just by instinct, so that you could go for 24 to 36 hours without sleeping and still have enough mental capacity to be sharp. So it's really, really interesting when you get deep into it. But we're just looking at this on the surface and how it relates to us in trading. And our brains are always trying to save itself from overworking. It's just a natural thing. Our brains are processed to try and conserve processing power whenever it can. Okay, once we learn how to walk, we don't need to think about how to walk. Once we learn how to brush our teeth, we don't have to think about it anymore, or any of these other mundane details. We're just able to do it. So we just want to be able to devote our mental energy to the more sophisticated things that we need to be successful. And also, we talked about how our brain has developed this system to determine when it's appropriate to let habits take over. Okay, we program that. So let's say we take a loss. And for most of us, if the first trade of the day is a loss, we tend to lose it. We tend to get upset. We tend to get irritated. And it happens to me sometimes, especially when there's this big trade that I'm looking for and it doesn't happen. You know,
Bank of America's,
I can get real disappointed.
2025 to get into,
you know, and lose my cool. But when I feel that, I have a process that will overtake that behavior and allow me to recenter. And that's what I'm talking about, having to build these habits so that things that trigger bad habits now will trigger good habits later. No, that's the key. Looks like I got two. Alright, I had the extra slide in there. Sorry about that. So, moving on to what we're talking about today. You know, we're still talking about how our habits work. And our habits tend to stick to us because we have that craving. They create a craving. So, let's look at this scenario. Let's say every afternoon for the past year, you stop by the cigar lounge after your trading day for a beer or two and a cigar. It's your reward for sticking to your trading process. Okay, you're like, if you stick to your trading process, I'm going to reward you. So we have a habit of sticking to our process every day. And regardless of whether we have a positive P&L or a negative P&L, doesn't matter. All that matters is we stuck to our trading process. Okay? But in about 8 to 12 months, you end up going to the doctor. You put some weight on, and the doctor is saying, look, your health, you know, we're detecting some things that, you know, could be concerned for your health going forward. What have you done differently in the last year? And you say, well, I just stopped by the lounge, cigar lounge every day and, you know, grab a cigar and a beer. Every now and then I might take two. You know, but it only happens during the week. I don't do it on the weekends. Bad enough. Okay, there's your problem. Your habit or your reward for sticking to a good habit is a bad habit. It's a bad process. So what do? Alright? So you decide that it's in your best interest to kick that habit. Okay, I gotta stop that. Okay, but how do you think you feel that first evening? If you drive past the lounge without stopping for that reward, you know, odds are you're gonna say, hey, I'll just do it one more time, or I'm gonna finish the week out, I'll start it next week. Or you'll just go home pissed off and depressed because, you know, you don't have any reward anymore. And what do you think that's gonna affect next? You're gonna say, look, I don't have this reward, so why am I sticking to this process? What do I have to drive me to stick to this process? Because you don't have a reward. You know, but kicking a bad habit is hard because you develop a craving for the reward at the end of that habit loop. Okay, so here you have a really good habit in place of following your training process and doing everything else. but the reward is a bad habit. Now, how do you deal with that? So you have to, and that's what we're going to be focusing on here in the next couple of weeks. But here's the deal. Remember, we've got the external cue. We've got the routine. Like this could be, we could say the external cue is, the end of our trading day. Whether we stop at 4 when the bell rings, whatever. Then we've got, the routine that we follow. The reward is going to the, to the cigar bar. This is the bad habit. So the cue, we can't change. But we can change the routine and the reward based on that cue after we have completed that day. We can change the routine and the reward. It is hard because we love that reward. But the good news is that cravings work for forming good habits as well, even though that the good craving may not be as good or fulfilling as a bad habit of a drink and a smoke. So, let's say we're replacing that habit at the end of the day with going to the gym and kind of working out a little bit. Okay? But, it may seem punitive, but at the end of your workout, you get to go sit in the sauna and just release, or the whirlpool, or the steam room. And it's soothing and comforting and centering, and it gives you that same feeling that you got when you were drinking a beer or two, or even a bourbon and a cigar. It's giving you that same comfort. Okay, so here you took a bad habit, flipped it into a good habit, and you have a reward of soothing and comforting activity. You can't pass that up. That once you do this a couple of times, you have replaced your bad habit with the good habit. I know it may sound easy. I know it's not easy. Because you have to develop that habit. You have to more or less force yourself to go to the gym the first week or two until you start realizing how rewarding it is and how much better it makes you feel. All right. So again, before you know it, you just created a new and more healthy habit loop, which is actually a reward for you doing what you're supposed to do that day. So, as anyone trying to give up cigarettes will tell you, when the craving for nicotine hits, it's hard to ignore. Okay, nicotine, smoking is more or less a chemical dependency. Okay, so that's something completely different than, let's say, revenge trading or something like that. It's really hard. So, but no matter what it is, and I brought up cigarettes, alcoholism, you're dependent, you're chemical dependent. And that makes it a little bit more difficult. But the golden rule for quitting any habit, don't try to resist it. Remember, how many times have I told you, don't try to ignore your habits. Ignore your emotions. Don't try to kill your emotions. Redirect it. redirect them. Let's turn these negative reactions to emotions to positive ones, because we as humans are emotional beings. Less than 1% of us can operate without emotion, and these are the ones that can pass lie detector tests. They'll probably be ones that are excellent gamblers and traders, because they really don't have any emotion to start with. So, in other words, you should keep the same cues and rewards, but change the routine that occurs because of the craving. Alright, so let's go back real quick. Let's go back to going to the gym after a day trading versus going to the bar, the cigar lounge. Smoking a cigar and drinking a beer, we do that because we want to, feel that sense of relaxation. It takes us to a place where we have wound down and we're relaxed, but we can do that same, we can find that same feeling at the end of a workout at the gym. We didn't change that. We didn't change the reward. The reward is still that feeling of accomplishment, that feeling of, that we did it. We can relax and wind down and release, and that's there. By going to the sauna, the whirlpool, or the steam bath. I mean, if you've ever done that, you know the feeling I'm talking about. So that's why we say you should keep the same cues. The cue is the good trading day that you had where you followed your process, and the rewards is that feeling you get after celebrating it. Okay, but the routine of the reward, the routine for the reward from your trading day has to change. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, let me know, and I can try to explain it in a different way. But several studies from former smokers have shown that by identifying the cues and rewards around their smoking habit and replacing the routine with one that has a similar reward, I don't know how doing some push-ups gives you the same reward from smoking, but eating a piece of Nicorette gum or simply relaxing for a few minutes, the chances of staying smoke-free increases significantly. That means they look for something that's going to give them close to the same feeling they got from that chemical dependence that they have. And that's difficult. But when they can do that, they're successful. Now, one could argue Nicorette gum is just masking the issue, but we're not getting into that. We're just getting into the physical act of smoking right now, and how you could, how they would change that. But to change a habit, we already talked about substituting the routine for another. But the other big thing, and this can't happen, the change cannot happen if you don't believe in the change. So not only do you need to change your habit by substituting the routine for another, you have to believe in that change. Okay, but as always, there's one issue that can derail that process, And it is 100% the issue that derails us every day as traders. Okay, as soon as a stressful event occurs, the old habit shows back up and becomes too strong to resist, no matter how long you have replaced that habit. So, that's why I always tell you, when you have a bad morning, when things don't go right, and you are not in a good place, the best thing to do is not trade. Because if you do, things don't work out, it's going to be a lot more stressful than normal because of the morning that you had. And without you knowing it, old habits will show back up and cause you to make really bad mistakes. And when that happens, it can mess with your confidence, because it shakes the belief that you had in yourself and your ability to trade and stick to your process no matter what. Alright, so you understand that cycle. That's what traders go through every day, especially new traders. We get stressed over every little thing. And once that occurs, everything that we've learned, even if we just learned it yesterday, we're going to forget. We're going to forget we ever knew it. And that's something that we have to stay away from. So, of course, this is why I tell you guys it's so important to identify the feelings you get right before you start to come apart. That's why it's important. You have to identify those so you know when they're coming. You have a process to address that. For me, it's leaving. For me, it's just walking away and working on getting my head screwed back on straight. So I know when a stressful event occurs, I know my old habits are going to sneak up, because you're talking about years and years and years of human nature that you had to change in order to be a successful trader. And so you have to be locked in at all times. All right, so Keystone Habits. This is something that we're going to dive into next week. We're going to, look at this a little bit harder and how we can define and develop Keystone Habits that's going to help us. But I'm going to give you one example today. Keystone Habits work by providing small wins. That is, early successes that are fairly easy to attain. So, why do you think I went from getting everybody to try and pass the 25K eval versus the 50K eval? It's a lot easier to make $1,500 than it is to make $3,000. Okay, and you have less chance of going backwards. That's why I determined that the 25K would be easier for you to pass. And it would force you to trade and manage your risk the way you would need to once you get into your performance account. Okay, we should know by now most of the mistakes that can cost us our account, right? So we just need to form these keystone habits. It also helps us to believe that improvement is possible. So, for instance, research indicates that doctors have a hard time getting obese people, like me, to make a broad change in their lifestyle. So I'm not picking on anybody. I'm considered obese as well, so I'm part of that group. However, when patients focus on developing one keystone habit, such as keeping a meticulous food journal, other positive habits start to take root as well. What's the key word here, guys? What's the key word, traders? What's the keystone habit here? Journal. A journal is a keystone habit that other positive habits can be born out of. If you journal like you're supposed to, you're going to see what mistakes you're making over and over and over and over again. And if it's you reacting to something, if you do it right, you're going to be documenting how you feel when this situation happened, how you felt when that situation happened. These are going to help you determine the negative influences in your trading that creates these bad habits. And you'll be able to work on them one at a time. That's why, some people get mad and, fuss about the mentoring part. Look, you got to work. Okay, I can't help you if you don't do the work for yourself. I can't crack your head open and get inside and find out what you're thinking and feeling. That's something you have to document and share with me so that we could try to create these keystone habits that will keep you from making these same mistakes over and over again. Does that make sense? I mean, does this help you understand the process? I hope so. Because if you don't, you're going to have a hard time getting better at this. Okay, you're starting to see how your habits are affecting your trading and why we have to develop habits to respond. Develop habits to respond to oh still boy. Yeah, to develop habits to respond to the issues that we have. All right, so let me hear from you guys that are not asleep. Is this connecting some of the dots for you? If everybody took the time to learn and understand this versus trying to find the next greatest pseudo strategy. Pseudo means false if you're not a scientist. Pseudo strategy. Or the next secret indicator, or it doesn't matter. Even if you have the best indicator, we've got the linear regression channel, which I think is probably one of the more accurate studies out there. But if you don't have the mindset, the capability, the tools that you need to execute on it, it doesn't matter what you have. You're not going to be able to do it. There's a bunch of people live streaming, themselves trading futures. And people try to copy them and all of this stuff, but they may get lucky and pass a eval, but they never get the payout because by the time they get to the performance, one big trade is not going to get them paid. It's not going to get them paid, and they're missing the boat. They haven't created the big habits, and a lot of these guys that were getting paid won't be getting paid anymore. So what now? If you don't know how to do this right, you're in bad shape. Alright, so I'm going to stop this recording. I'm going to get it uploaded and get it put in the folder later today.